ready.
Three, two, one.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Larry Pepper, and I am the recently elected president of Men of Reform Judaism. It's my privilege and honor this evening to introduce our webinar guest, Dr. Laura Shaw Frank. Dr. Frank serves as the Vice President, AJC Center for Education Advocacy, is a passionate and award-winning educator with extensive experience in both Jewish and broader educational landscapes. Laura leads AJC's efforts to shape kindergarten through 12 and higher education institutions that reject anti-Semitism in all forms and foster inclusive environments for Jewish students. Dr. Shaw Frank teaches and speaks nationwide, educating Jews and non-Jews about Jewish identity and connection to Israel, the history and current manifestations of anti-Semitism, and the power of education to create change. She holds a PhD in Jewish history from the University of Maryland, College Park, and both undergraduate and law degrees from Columbia University. And at this time, I'm going to turn the program over to MRJ's Executive Director, Stephen Portnoy.
Thank you, Larry. Just, if I may, okay, thank you. And welcome, everyone. Tonight's webinar is going to be a little bit different than perhaps what you're used to. In discussions of anti-Semitism, it's usually centered around our students. And tonight we're going to take a slightly different tack, and we're going to talk about what parents can do to help their students on college campuses and schools. So, Dr. Frank, I appreciate your joining us, and thank you, and I'm going to turn this over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephen and Larry, and it's so great to be with all of you tonight. I'm going to share my screen. I have a few slides I'd like to show as we talk about what the campus climate is for Jewish students, what parents need to know, and what parents can do. So give me 1 second. Great. Okay. So I know that there are so many concerns right now about campus climate. And we're going to spend some time tonight talking a little bit about data regarding campus climate, as well as how to be a supportive parent of a Jewish student on campus, what to think about as your child might be transitioning to campus, and what you need to know as a parent in terms of advocacy in this moment for Jewish students on campus. So I am the vice president at American Jewish Committee for the Center for Education Advocacy. And many of you may be familiar with AJC, American Jewish Committee. We were founded in 1906 to support the Jewish people around the world. And we have 3 priority areas: fighting anti-Semitism, ensuring Israel's place in the world. And we achieve both of those big subject matter areas through elevation of democratic values, along with all of our other work. The Center for Education Advocacy is a relatively new center at American Jewish Committee, and I want to just take a second to talk about what our work is. We were announced about a year ago in 2024, and we work to ensure that that education spaces, and we're talking about K through 12 and higher ed, the whole spectrum, are inclusive of Jews and Jewish identity, refuse to normalize anti-Semitism in any form, and are rooted in critical thinking, viewpoint diversity, fact-based inquiry, are committed to democratic values. You're going to see in a second why I talk about that critical thinking, viewpoint diversity, fact-based inquiry, those kind of democratic education things, because we feel that those aspects of education are actually very important to keep Jewish students safe and enabling Jewish students, and in fact, all students, to thrive on campus. We also work with Jewish students and parents. In particular, our high school program Leaders for Tomorrow and our campus programs, the Campus Global Board and our Goldman Fellows, which is a summer internship program. So we're doing a whole lot in many, many ways, working with K through 12 administrators, higher ed administrators, parents, and students to achieve those spaces in the education world, which is so incredibly important. Oops, that. Okay, I want to take a second to talk just about what our work on campus is, because you may be wondering out there, there are a million organizations working on campus in the Jewish community. How are you different than any other Jewish organization working on campus? And I would say that every Jewish organization that works on campus is doing work that's a little bit different, which is good. And we truthfully need all the Jewish organizations to do all the work on campus in this moment because things are very, very challenging. I want to say this about AJC's work. Our work is proactive rather than reactive. What do I mean by that? What I mean is we are not engaged, usually, in doing specific incident response. What we are engaged in is deep structural work with campus leaders, university presidents, vice presidents for student life, provosts, leaders on campus, as well as student leaders on campus, to do the deep structural work that we need to transform our campuses for the long term. The kinds of problems we're seeing on campus today did not arise yesterday. They will not be solved tomorrow. And we really need to think in a very, very structural way and a very deep way to think about how we're going to bring about the change that we really need on campus. We've created an action plan. I'll show it to you at the end of the presentation for higher ed administrators that has been cited by many university presidents and by Congress as being a very, very useful tool to give campuses what they need to make that structural change, short, medium, long-term strategies that they need. What I want to highlight maybe most of all is a statement that we entered into in May 2025, so just a few months ago, together with AAU, which is the Association of American Universities, and ACE, the American Council on Education. Between those two higher ed organizations, they represent thousands of higher ed institutions, from community colleges to public and private research universities. And that statement calls upon universities and says that universities will engage in consequential reform and transparent action to root out anti-Semitism. So that's what we're working on. We're working on those sort of deep structural actions. Okay, I want to spend a couple minutes talking about some statistics because statistics help us paint a picture of what's actually going on campus. So we did a study last year, our State of Anti-Semitism report of 2024. We're actually about to put our 2025 study into the field, so we'll have updated statistics soon. But our 2024 report, and we did a special series in that report together with Hillel International that focused specifically on students on campus, found that 1 in 3 American Jewish college students said they experienced anti-Semitism during their time as a college student. 1 in 3. That's actually horrendous. It is an incredibly, incredibly high number. So what are those flashpoints that create those moments of anti-Semitism on campus? Where is your student, your child, your grandchild maybe most likely to see anti-Semitism on campus? So I would say it's really 5 different areas that we see. One is protests. And thankfully, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes, protests have been clamped down upon a lot through a lot of work that AJC did with presidents, other Jewish organizations as well, and the government and other places, and of course the campuses themselves. So the protests are definitely not as bad as they were about a year ago, a year and a half ago. But we also see anti-Semitism arising in student activities with things like exclusion of students, like you can't be in the hip hop club because you're a Zionist, or we don't want Zionists writing for the school newspaper, that kind of stuff. Residential life, we see it happening in dorm rooms with things like swastikas being drawn on doors, mezuzahs getting knocked off of doors, also exclusion of Zionists. We see it happening in the classroom. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute with respect to professors, graduate assistants, and fellow classmates. And of course, we see it on social media. And you should know that actually younger people, unsurprisingly, are on the receiving end of anti-Semitism on social media significantly more than older people. So we found that in our State of Anti-Semitism report that students or people under the age of 30, from 18 to 29, were 5% more likely to be the target of a direct anti-Semitic remark on social media than people over 30. And in terms of seeing or hearing anti-Semitic content online, people from ages 18 to 29 were 18% more likely to see that kind of content than people over 30. So social media is definitely a big issue there. Brandeis University did a study a little over a year ago, and they will also be repeating a study this year on understanding hostility to Jews in Israel on campus. And if you look at see what this question was, how many students on the Jewish side and on the non-Jewish side felt that there was a hostile environment toward Jews on campus. So you'll see that 60% of Jewish students in August 2024 felt that there was a hostile environment toward Jews on campus. 60%, which is quite shocking, 3 out of 5. And unsurprisingly, non-Jewish students were far less likely to see that being the case. I think we've got 11 plus 40, 42. Yeah. So a lower percentage of non-Jewish students saw it that way. Again, not surprising, but also, I guess, perhaps heartening to see that a pretty high percentage of non-Jewish students also saw that hostile environment. So this is a real issue that we're dealing with. I mentioned before that we have faculty, we have class curriculum, student activities as being different places on campus that are those flashpoints for anti-Semitism. So our State of Anti-Semitism report that we did with Hill International last year showed some pretty unfortunate and very shocking statistics that 32% felt that faculty on campus had fueled an environment that's hostile to Jews or fostered anti-Semitism, 24% class curricula, and 33% student life and student activities. Now, of course, we are measuring feelings here. So feelings are, not empirical. They're not like a number or data. It's something that each person has a difference. Everyone feels things differently. But even if we're dealing with a range of feelings, meaning some students may think that something that others would not think is anti-Semitic, some students might feel is anti-Semitic. But even adjusting for those kinds of differences in attitudes and feelings, we're still dealing with numbers that are very, very significant, upsettingly so, and very much in need of addressing. So, what are we supposed to do about it? I think one of the first things that we need to think about is understanding the particularities of campus. And this is one of the places where parents can be really useful. And also, it's something that's very important for parents to understand, is a couple of things that make campus specific and different and unique. And I'm going to mention two things here. The first is freedom of speech, and the second is academic freedom. Obviously, freedom of speech is something that exists everywhere in the United States, any place that's governed by the government. People have a right to free speech. So campuses, public campuses that receive government funding, as we've seen now, like every campus receives government funding, but public campuses have much more weightiness to freedom of speech, to the First Amendment, than private campuses. They are required to have freedom of speech on campus. Freedom of speech includes hate speech. We may not like that. I actually think it's probably a good idea because one person's hate speech is another person's something else. But freedom of speech does indeed include hate speech. So that means that your kids may hear things that they don't like. They may hear things that make them uncomfortable. They may hear things that are downright offensive, and those things may still be okay to say on campus because of First Amendment protections. That does not mean that they can be harassed. It does not mean that they can be directly targeted by speech, like go attack that person. That is not protected speech. Ongoing harassment that prevents somebody from having the learning environment that allows them to access what they're in college to do, that is not protected speech. But freedom of speech does cover a lot. So it is important for you to know and for your children to know that freedom of speech is a thing on campus. What campuses have to do is they're allowed to restrict speech, for example, protests, but only in a content neutral way. What does that mean? That means they can't say there can't be pro-Israel rallies or there can't be anti-Israel rallies. It can only be restrictions that are content neutral. For example, as you can see in this picture next to me and then on the right side of your screen, they can restrict the time, place, and manner of a protest. So for example, they can say you're not allowed to protest after 9 p.m. People are going to sleep. Maybe not on college campuses, but okay. You can't protest in the middle of the library or in a building where there's classes. You can't use a megaphone. Those are time, place, and manner restrictions, and those are used by campuses all the time to keep campus working properly through protest culture. But again, freedom of speech, very important on campus. And the other thing is academic freedom. Professors have academic freedom. Academic freedom means that they have the freedom to say what their academic theories are in class, even if those theories are theories that we don't agree with, they're theories your kids don't agree with, they're theories that make your kids uncomfortable. What they should not be doing in class is telling your children, your kids, your students what to think. They should be offering their opinion and their stance and their theory and teaching our kids how to think. That isn't always the case, but academic freedom does protect professors to be able to speak about their theories on education, their theories on the world, their theories on Israel and Palestinian conflict. And so that's another issue that's important. One of the things that we at AJC are thinking a lot about is how we're supposed to take that academic freedom and make sure that campuses have enough viewpoint diversity, enough different opinions about things on campus, that the kinds of studies and academic information that our students are getting is varied, and the conversations they're having are complex and rich and nuanced. One other thing I'll say about academic freedom does not protect a professor saying, we're going to have class today in the encampment, or we're going to require you to go attend a protest that's against Israel in order to get a good grade. That is not protected in academic freedom, and if something like that happens, we'll talk about what to do about it in a moment. Another thing that is not protected under academic freedom is, an astronomy professor or TA should not be opining about the Israel-Palestinian conflict in class. That's not part of their academic freedom. That's their own sort of personal views. So when you're preparing for college, you're trying to even choose a school. Maybe you're not even at the point of having accepted a school, but you're actually choosing a school. What should you be thinking about as a parent? The first thing we always say is know your child. What does that mean? Some kids are very, very out there and eager to sort of get their fists ready for a fight. I don't mean a physical fight, but I mean they're ready to go out and protest and they want to defend Israel and they want to do those kinds of things on campus. Some kids may really want to keep their head down and just go to school. Some kids may want to go to Hillel on Shabbat and they don't want somebody blocking the door and protesting. Know your child and what kind of campus is going to be comfortable for your child. Use judgment with what you see online. What do I mean by that? So sometimes you're going to see a lot of hysterical stuff online. You will see information online that says that maybe a campus allowed a protest and therefore nobody should go there. Protests are allowed. We have freedom of speech. So we don't want to kind of say that a campus that allowed a protest is an inappropriate campus for Jewish students to attend. Take into account a rich understanding of what's going on a campus. How vibrant is Jewish life on campus? Is there a high percentage of Jews on campus? Go visit the Hillel and Chabad when you're touring campuses. See how vibrant Jewish life is. What are the offerings? How many Jewish students are hanging around at a Hillel house or a Chabad house during the day? Does campus life feel exciting and rich for Jewish kids? Talk to Jewish students on campus and find out what's actually going on. Oftentimes, you may get a different view from the Jewish students on campus than from people of our generation. If for those of you out there of my generation, I'm Gen X or older or millennials, people who have Jewish students on campus. Sometimes we may be a little bit more fearful, maybe a little bit more have kind of the worry light on than our kids do. So it's really important to kind of talk to Jewish students and see how they're feeling on campus and how they would rate their campus experience. Whoops. Once your student is on campus, what we recommend very, very strongly is to make sure you're checking in with your student. I have put a picture here of somebody texting because we know that's the way it's going to happen, likely. But we encourage you to listen first. Let your student open up to you. Ask curious, open-minded, open-ended questions. How is your student? How are you doing? What's been going on campus? How are your classes? What's interesting about them? What's challenging about them? So that you can kind of give them an opportunity to maybe share some things that might be uncomfortable and they might not be so open to sharing at the beginning. Foster resilience. These kids are in college. So we want to make sure that they feel empowered to address issues on their own. I mean, one of the greatest things, gifts that adults of young emerging adults can give those young emerging adult children is that ability to rely on themselves and trust themselves, of course, with your advice if they want it. If your child does unfortunately encounter something anti-Semitic on campus, please encourage them to report. We know that not reporting is a huge problem. Probably over 70% of people who experience anti-Semitism do not report it. So we really want to encourage people to report, because if you don't report, it cannot be addressed. Okay, campus resources and support systems. So when we think about campus and what we want to kind of understand about the campus ecosystem for our kids, the first thing that we always highlight for people is the Jewish organizations. There are two Jewish organizations that exist actually physically on campus, on many, many campuses, and that's Hillel and Chabad. Those are great organizations that kids should access, not just when something bad happens, but also for Jewish joy and Jewish just events and socializing and baking challah and doing social justice programs and whatever it is that they want to do, going to services, lighting Hanukkah candles, going to Rosh Hashanah services. Jewish organizations are wonderful. And there are also Jewish organizations beyond campus, such as AJC. We have our Campus Global Board, which has students literally from every continent in the world other than Antarctica, and summer internships for students called our Goldman Fellows. So there's Jewish organizations beyond campus that your kids can get involved with and can turn to when they want Jewish joy, when they want support, when something bad is going on. So definitely encourage your kids to access those Jewish organizations. We also really encourage kids to get involved in interfaith and intergroup work. One of the things that's sorely lacking on campus today, but more than just on campus, actually in our country and maybe our world in general, is the ability to dialogue across difference, to speak with people with whom we might not agree about everything, people who might actually differ with us significantly about things. And we find that interfaith and intergroup spaces are excel at having those kinds of conversations. And when they happen, there are friendships that emerge, there are relationships that emerge, and those things help make a campus less polarized, less activated. There are fewer protests, etc., and they can be much, much more friendly and happy and thriving places for all students, and including Jewish students. Constructive dialogue across difference. Some campuses actually have specific programs for students to engage in dialogue across difference. Some of them are even mandatory. We highly encourage those kinds of conversations. There's so much that students don't understand about the other. And the more we can sort of break down those boundaries and barriers, the more we can reduce hate and raise understanding. So we really encourage that. However, even if one is doing all the most wonderful activities on campus to that regard, anti-Semitism can and does happen. So what do you do then? So again, as I mentioned on the previous slide, it's super, super important that students report. Campuses have reporting mechanisms. Typically, it's through their website. And they should be trained on how to report instances of hate during orientation freshman year. But certainly they can find out through their campus portal, through the student life part of the campus website. So definitely they should be reporting. In addition to reporting on campus, they can also email AJC or other Jewish organizations. Hillel, go to Hillel on campus, go to Chabad and report that it's happened there. They may be able to help there on the ground. Title VI. So Title VI is part of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and it protects against discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, and national origin. And for the past 20 years, the federal government has included being Jewish under national origin because of shared ancestry. That's what they call it. So some campuses now have a Title VI coordinator. And if there is a Title VI coordinator, then your child, your student, can report anti-Semitism, if it should happen to them, directly to that Title VI coordinator. I also want to remark that if your student is experiencing severe anti-Semitism on campus, you can actually file, or they can actually file a Title VI complaint through the federal government, through the Office of Civil Rights online. Now, the Office of Civil Rights is very backed up. You're not going to get a response immediately, but it is an option that is open to you. And lastly, please make sure that if your child has experienced anti-Semitism, any form of hate, that they're getting the mental health support that they need. Those things can be very, very upending, particularly for a student away from home for the first time. Campuses do have often very strong mental health support networks and services. So please make sure that they're getting that help as well. I want to mention AGC's website, which has a lot of resources for your child, for you, that might be helpful as you think about this college career, this time for your child, your young adult children in college. The first thing is, if you see on the bottom of the screen, agc.org/crisis on campus, we have a ton of resources on our website, including what you can see on the upper left-hand corner, Confronting Anti-Semitism on Campus, an action plan for university administrators. This is our action plan that I mentioned earlier that has short, medium, and long-term strategies for change on campus to combat anti-Semitism, to create atmospheres where Jewish students can thrive that are resilient against anti-Semitism in all forms. Share it with administrators. If you yourself know campus administrators, your children can certainly share this with their deans, with vice presidents for student life, vice presidents for inclusion and belonging, whoever they come into contact with, they should share that resource. On the right is our Instagram account for AGC. Highly recommend that your kids follow AGC on Instagram. We have a lot of great information, a lot of important material that they can access, reels, videos, just resources, all kinds of things. And also just wanted to mention that the past couple of weeks, we've had two really important episodes of our podcast about campus. One was an interview with a graduate student, Adam Louis Klein, called From the Amazon to Academia. And it's all about his sort of really incredible structural and academic framework for rethinking anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism on campus. And the last one I'll mention, this is really important, is Jewish college students were interviewed just last week on our People of the Pod, and how they're building strength amid this time of crisis on campus. So definitely very, very strongly recommend that you access those resources and continue to check back, because we're posting new resources all the time. And I'll just mention, we're here to help. Please contact us. Within the Center for Education Advocacy, we have a director of campus affairs named Moosh Lenzer, who's an incredible resource for young people on campus. He takes our kids all over the world, our Campus Global Board kids all over the world. Our Campus Global Board itself is an incredible resource. What we do with Campus Global Board is, if a student contacts us and says, I'm having a problem at XYZ campus, we connect them with somebody from the Campus Global Board who will be able to help them, maybe mentor them, maybe support them, maybe know somebody else to connect them with on their very own campus. You can see those are some kids from our Campus Global Board right there on the bottom. I shouldn't say kids, they're not kids. So reach out to us at campus@agc.org. And of course, please, again, check out our website, agc.org, Center for Education Advocacy, for the resources and tools that you need. It's a difficult time. It's a very, very challenging time. But it's really a time where there are resources available in ways that maybe is unprecedented for Jewish kids on campus. We're here to answer questions, and we're here to be a support. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I'm here to answer any questions, Stephen.
All right. Well, thank you. There is certainly a lot there to unpack. I do want to do a quick public service announcement for all the parents and whoever has a child that might be going or is in college. Since the mid-90s, Men of Reform Judaism has had as one of our primary programs, a Reform on Campus, where we make grants for programs that, in this case at least, concern or have values of Reform Judaism. So if there's a Hillel and you've got a student who's got an idea for something that might work, a Shabbaton, an interfaith Seder, any of those, please see our website, menrj.org. It's very simple. And under what we do, you'll find out about our Reform on Campus grants. So
that's a great thing. I'm glad you're doing that. That's fabulous.
It's if we ran the numbers since the mid-90s, we're probably talking somewhere about $750,000 that
It's
we've
extraordinary.
yeah, no, it's a program that we're very proud of. So this evening, actually maybe 15 or 20 minutes before we started the webinar this evening, tragically Jewish, I get a lot of email with various organizations, and JTA's evening bulletin went out. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it yet. So there is now a group that has, in essence, resigned from Jewish Students for Palestine because they were not radical enough. A Jewish Voice for Peace, rather. And it's a new national organization called Anti-Zionist Jewish Student Front. And apparently the people behind it are anonymous. So how does AJC, A, track this, watch it, and B, get the word out to parents, and in this case, I would assume administrators, so that they can be aware of threats that at this point might still be under the counter?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stephen. Organizations like this can be a real concern. Of course, it's very hard to know who's behind this. It could be three people, it could be 3,000 people. It's very, very hard to know who's behind it. An organization for the Jewish Voice for Peace is insufficiently radical. That's pretty radical, I will say. We have done an enormous amount with university administrators to explain to them what Jewish Voice for Peace is and how to understand that. I'll tell you, it's very interesting. We so often get things like, but if we do this for this group of Jewish students, we're going to alienate Jewish Voice for Peace. And our response to that is very, very simple. You have to understand that Jewish Voice for Peace is not part of the mainstream Jewish community. There is a wide range of views about Israel, about the Israel-Palestinian conflict, about the war in Gaza against Hamas, among the Jewish community. We know that. But Jewish Voice for Peace is a very small minority of the Jewish community. And we know, actually, from our State of Antisemitism report, that 85% of American Jews, and by the way, 85% of the general population of America, the number is the same, say that saying Israel does not have a right to exist is anti-Semitic. 85% of Jews and of non-Jews in this country. So we're talking about a very, very large majority of the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community who say that. So it's very important. We always say that representation of the Jewish community needs to come from the wide range, the vast majority of the Jewish community. That doesn't mean we all have to have the same views. We don't all have to have the same views. But it is very important that university administrators, particularly in the student life division, understand that realm. Jewish Voice for Peace sounds like a very peaceful name. And oftentimes campuses don't understand. I actually recently had a conversation. It actually wasn't from someone from campus. It was someone from a teachers union who really, really did, a K through 12 teachers union, who did not understand that Jewish Voice for Peace was actually a very radical left organization that was not mainstream in the Jewish community at all. So I think that one of the main things that we need to do is make sure the universities understand what the Jewish community in general holds. And also, it's really important that Jewish students, like every other minority group, can speak for themselves, meaning the Jewish community, Hillel, Chabad, the organized Jewish community on campus, gets to decide what is hateful to them. That may not mean that particular speech is going to be banned on campus, but certainly they get to decide what speech is anti-Semitic, just like any other marginalized group on campus gets to decide what is hateful to them. I would definitely flag this new organization, and we will flag this new organization for campuses. What we have found is, unfortunately, organizations like JVP, like SJP also, which is not a Jewish organization, are often behind some of the radical protests on campus that are sometimes destructive, not always, but sometimes destructive, sometimes creating enormous vandalism, sometimes even violence against Jewish students. And certainly holding up campus and not permitting people to engage in what they're there to do, which is learn and grow. So we'll be alerting campus about our interlocutors on campus, presidents, et cetera, about this new group. But I think that those are the really important frameworks to use to describe what they are. And again, I would caution everybody by just saying, like, we don't know who these people are. It really could be, two people. Hopefully not. I didn't read the article. Maybe it says more about them there.
It's, as I said, it was just maybe 10 or 15 minutes in JTA's evening news blast. And I frankly at first thought it might be a joke, but unfortunately it's not. I also do want to just quickly recognize that we probably also have a lot of Bubbies and Sadies listening, and thank you for that. I'm glad you're joining us, and this is a very appropriate conversation for you to be a part of also. Dara Freed has questioned, do you offer the list of what to do on campus to seniors in high school? I imagine she's talking about the whole statement in anti-Semitism and your wonderful website where you've got just tons of information. So
Yeah, we do. So first of all, I just want to say that I am also a Bubby.
you're too young. Come on.
I am. I'm a Bubby. I have a 4.5-month-old grandson whose name is Charlie.
Muzzle.
And he's delicious. But yes, we do have that material on our website. We actually have action plans for students. And that kind of information will be in our action plan for students. If you go on ajc.org/crisis on campus, you will find our student action plan, which will have a lot of the information that I shared here tonight. I would also really, really encourage people out there to have your children/grandchildren, whoever's in high school, look into our Leaders for Tomorrow program, which is actually about to launch for this year. Probably most of the cohorts are full already, unfortunately, but you can check out in your region, in your area, whether there is still room in a cohort for your child. We typically want them to be in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. We don't typically take 9th graders for that program, but it's a fantastic program that teaches about Jewish identity, about proud Jewish advocacy, Jewish joy, Jewish history, history of Israel, and how to stand up for the Jewish people on campus and beyond. So definitely encourage that.
Okay, so I would think it's probably very difficult as a student, particularly with today's political environment, let alone anti-Semitic environment, who's sitting in a class, and I'll give you a real life experience so we can relate it to academic freedom. When I was in high school in a geometry class, it was December 7th, and the teacher started what I considered a rant about Pearl Harbor and who was responsible. So if we're looking at it through today's lens, that would not be academic freedom. Am I correct?
So it's not academic freedom in the classic sense of the word, but professors also have freedom of speech. So they could say whatever they want to say about Pearl Harbor. Students can disagree with them, or about Pearl Harbor, whatever, whatever it happens to be. Students can disagree with them. There is quite a bit of latitude for professors to speak. I will tell you that this is a huge conversation right now with our interlocutors on campus, our university presidents and provosts that we work with. I'm thinking about how to restore a sense of viewpoint diversity on campus. So we have a multitude of views, less exclusion of pro-Israel Zionist views on campus, but also a sense that faculty members have a responsibility to their students. A responsibility, as I said earlier, to teach them how to think and not what to think. Again, professors have academic freedom, they also have freedom of speech. So one can't require them to say this, that, or the other thing in a classroom. And we don't want to do that, right? Because if we start doing that for things that we disagree with or things that we want them to say or don't want them to say, that's fine when it's what we agree with. But what about when somebody comes after us and says, no, 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 you can't say something pro-Israel in a class, or no, 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 you can't say something about Jews in a class, or whatever it is. So you have to be very careful about restricting speech and restricting academic freedom. At the same time, if a student feels that something is going on in a classroom where a teacher is repeatedly calling out Israel in a way that's demonizing, in a way that is holding Israel to double standards, in a way that's delegitimizing Israel, and it's happening again and again, and the student starts to believe that perhaps their grade is going to suffer as a Zionist, etc., that's something they should be reporting. It is important to report it, even if it ends up that it is covered by academic freedom, even if it ends up that it falls under those protections for the professor. It's important that the universities understand what is going on in classrooms. If something like that is going on, I would also very much recommend that the student just run by Hillel, just go into Hillel and just see, just talk to one of the campus professionals there and see this professor might be like a repeat offender, somebody who does this kind of thing a lot. And there may be information that Hillel or Chabad can help with that. So don't just let it lie. Don't just say, oh, it's academic freedom, it's freedom of speech. If it's something that's really happening a lot, if it feels targeting, they should definitely report it and they should definitely speak up about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking it would be a really difficult challenge for some students. I mean, given the climate and perhaps the feeling that their voice, even if they go to the administration on the campus or I think Hillel would take it seriously, but just that they might be afraid of reprisals.
Absolutely. Yes, we hear that a lot, and it's very real. We totally understand that fear. Um, that if you are in a situation where you fear a reprisal, that your grade is going to be lowered or whatever like that, probably the best thing to do is to start with Hillel because Hillels that have been on campus for a while, they know which professors are a problem and they may help you be able to report. I mean, not always, like they're always new graduate students, etc. But they may be able to advise you better how to engage in that reporting. Universities sometimes don't permit people to report anonymously, simply because reporting anonymously can actually raise the instance of bullying behavior when people sort of do fake reporting and things like that. So some universities, maybe even most, I'm not sure, don't allow anonymous reporting. But I think that in that circumstance, I would advise to go to Hillel first and just have a conversation with somebody there. Another thing you can do is you could go talk to, if there is a Title VI coordinator, you can go talk to the Title VI coordinator off the record and just say, listen, this is what I'm concerned about. Can you advise me? You can also go talk to somebody in an Office of Inclusion or Belonging. If there is somebody that you feel that you can trust, you can go to the Jewish Studies Department, places like that to have a conversation before reporting. But what we really, I just want to emphasize again and again is we don't want students to not report. It's so important. I'll tell you, last spring in 2024, when everything was on fire on campus, I remember speaking to one president on a particular campus where there was a lot of protest activity. And she said, I know that there's so much anti-Semitism happening on this campus, but the reports are not coming in. I don't have the data, and I can't address it unless I have the data. So please beg your students that you're in contact with to report. So do what you can to obviously, of course, protect yourself. Document everything so that if there is reprisal, you'll be able to perhaps prove it or at least intimate it. But I really would strongly suggest that people report if something untoward happens. I just want to say something else, which is that we know that the number of professors who are really, really problematic is small. It is a small number. They're very loud. They make the headlines a lot, but it's a small number. Brandeis University actually just did a study of faculty nationwide where they found that. Um, Obviously, even if it's 10% of professors, even if it's less than that, that's still 10% too many. And that's actually a fairly large number, even if it's only 10%. If you think about 10% of the professors nationwide, that's thousands of people. Um, but I don't want to make it out that every professor on campus is anti-Semitic and out to get our kids. That's not the case at all. But there are always those few bad actors.
So let's talk about dollars and cents, donor threats, financial concerns for universities, again, particularly with the current political climate where tomorrow you may get a note of attempting to claw back a couple of $1 billion from your funding. What do you say to the adults who have financial means and are considering their donations?
Yeah, so I would say this. We at AJC will never tell people what they should and should not be doing with their donor dollars. We hope they'll share their donor dollars with good organizations, as well as their universities like Men of Reformed Judaism and AJC. But we don't tell people what to do with their donor dollars. And I don't actually think there's one right or one wrong way to handle this. I will say that if you are giving to a campus and you have a dedicated person in the development office, you can use that person to share your concerns. And we've heard that actually specifically through development officers that concerns have been shared and have been elevated to the highest levels. So use that development officer to share concerns. I've seen it both ways. I've seen people want a seat at the table and therefore continuing to give money. And I've also seen organizations, family foundations, and individuals who have said, you know what, I can't stomach it. I simply cannot give money to this particular university anymore. I think that both of them have merits and both of them can be used very strategically in particular cases. And I would just encourage people to do whatever they do in a way that makes clear what their views are. So if you are refraining from giving money or deciding not to give any more money, share that with your university. If you are continuing to give money to the university, share with your development officer that you expect the university to live up to a certain standard and that you are continuing to give money now because you want to be able to have a say. So I would encourage you to just use your voice either way.
Yeah, my wife's sitting behind me. She's a great answer.
Thank you.
An ex-development officer, so yeah, I'm going to take that with 2 grains of salt. I was asked a question about whether or not it's feasible, desirable, advisable for parents to form a task force or an advisory group about their college students and particularly the college.
That's a really good question, Stephen. I'm glad you asked it. Here's what I would say. I would rather see parents focus as alumni of the university that they went to rather than a parents' task force in the school that their children go to. The reason I say that is because I would rather see parents empowering their children to be the actors on that campus rather than sort of stepping in and doing that sort of snow plowing for their kids. I'll just mention something that happened this past year. I'm a member, a Columbia alum, and there was an organization that wanted to come onto Columbia's campus to protest. And it was a group of parents that wanted to come onto campus to protest. And the Columbia students were really upset. They really did not want that. It was midterms, I think, at the time or something, and they had just finally gotten 5 seconds of quiet on campus, and they felt that this was going to sort of disturb the quiet. And this group of parents was very upset and was like, these students they're caving in, they're, giving in to the haters and whatever else. I think it's really important that we allow students to set the tone, to set the agenda for their campuses. They are adults. They are young adults, but they are adults. So I would really strongly advise parents to support their children. By the way, in the end, the parents group backed down. They did not go to do the protests on campus, thankfully. I would really strongly recommend that that parents stand back and give advice, be a listening ear, make recommendations to their kids on campus, but try to let their kids achieve that resilience, achieve that leadership to do the work on their campus themselves. And I would encourage parents really strongly to be active as alumni in the campuses that they attended. Certainly alumni are, like obviously alumni who are giving, seven-figure checks and eight-figure checks might be listened to a little more than alumni like me, who give, at the most a three-figure check. And right now, maybe not any. But there is, campuses do care about their alumni. They care, they do. And so I feel the groups of alumni and Jewish alumni groups have sprung up at many campuses around the country. I would recommend joining those Jewish alumni groups and investing in, and I don't mean financially investing necessarily, but investing your time and your energy for campus advocacy in those spaces, while being sort of the cheerleader and the wind beneath the wings of your child who is on campus, letting them sort of dictate the way they want to do it on their own campus.
I think we have time for one more question. How can, I'm just going to use the term parent generically. Let's say somebody that has students in college or going to go to college. How do you measure the response to incidents that have been reported?
That is such an important question, Stephen. You want a university to speak out clearly and unequivocally when something anti-Semitic happens on campus. I'm actually going to give you a great example from this past week. At NYU, New York University, a mezuzah was missing from a student's door. And the university immediately spoke out and they said they are investigating it and it will be treated as a hate crime if indeed it was a hate crime. And we are taking it very, very seriously. And it went all the way up to the president. It turned out it actually was not a hate crime. I don't know what the story was, in fact, what was behind the scenes, but it turned out they weren't allowed to disclose that information. But it turned out it actually wasn't a hate crime at all, and it was something that was very benign. But you want what NYU did in that circumstance to speak out unequivocally and extremely clearly. That's number one. Number two, universities have codes of conduct. Hopefully, most of them have updated their student codes of conduct since the protests in 2024. Universities' codes of conduct for students and faculty, by the way, are available on their website, and you can look at them. Those codes of conduct not only need to exist where students are not permitted to engage in harassing behavior, are not permitted to engage in exclusionary behavior, etc., but they need to be enforced. Now, there is a federal statute called FERPA that prevents universities from saying, XYZ student committed a hate crime against, or XYZ student did something against some other student. You're not allowed to know what that student's punishment is because there's a privacy law, federal privacy law that prevents us from knowing. That does not mean, however, that the university cannot say that the action was taken according to our student code of conduct and it was carried out to the fullest extent. They don't have to say who's against. They don't have to say exactly what the punishment was, in case you could guess. But they can say that our code of conduct has been enforced. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for clear, unequivocal statements. We're looking for strong codes of conduct, and we're looking for enforcement of the codes of conduct. It's not enough that they exist on paper. They must be enforced. And they can say something about it, even if they can't speak completely freely because of federal privacy laws, they can still speak about the fact that the code of conduct was enforced.
Dr. Frank, thank you. This has been wonderfully educational and entertaining at the same time, which is a good trick to pull off. For those of you with us, AJC.org, menrj.org, and if you're so inclined, development is always appreciated. And go and enjoy your granddaughter. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions, there will be a follow-up in the registration. You can contact me. I will pass the questions along, unless, of course, it's a question for us, in which case I will have it answered. So again, thank you. Thank you, Larry. I know you're still listening, and thank all of you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.